Hey Gary, how are you, mate?
Good, how are you?
Good. Mate, just what I need. Lamb.
A rack of lamb.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a lamb Wellington. I was looking at beef, but I don't have it in my budget. So I thought lamb would be a great replacement.
I can actually bone it out for you if you like.
Oh, go on, yeah.
All right.
Good on you, buddy. Nice one, mate. I'll let you know how I go. So today I've decided to do a riff on a classic English dish, the beef Wellington. And instead of beef, which can be a little bit expensive at times, I'm going to use beautiful Victorian lamb, and I'm going to use a lamb loin instead of the beef fillet. Now, all the other components pretty much stay the same. Here in front of me, I've got some beautiful flat field mushrooms that I'm going to turn into a duxelle, which is basically a minced mushroom pate. Now, with the flat field mushrooms, you want large, nice open caps. They should be firm, and they shouldn't really be too brittle or broken. The flat field mushrooms are grown in a compost, so it's a good idea to give them a little clean, not wash them, a little clean before you use them. You can do what some chefs do and peel them and then use these peelings for stock or soup. But what I like to do is just get a damp cloth to just remove any debris, any soil that might be on the cap. That way we're not sort of wasting any time or money by discarding the skin. And what we do is we simply proceed to chop these mushrooms up. And I'm just going to dice them. They don't have to be too exact because I'll probably mince them more once they're cooked. We're going to cook them down with some aromats. We've got some thyme, beautiful garden thyme, some garlic, some butter, and a little bit of olive oil. And we're going to really intensify the flavour by cooking them down until we've extruded all the moisture and we've got a nice, rich, dark mushroom duxelle. No onions, just pure mushrooms. Now, it's deceptive. You'll start off with quite a volume of mushrooms, but mushrooms are nearly 70% water. So by the time we've cooked them down, they'll reduce by over half. If you can't get flat field mushrooms, you can use Swiss browns, button mushrooms, portobellos, which are actually a Swiss brown that have opened up. One thing I used to love doing, more so when I lived in Europe, is going foraging for mushrooms. So in those sort of wet mornings and early autumnal days, and you'd go and find porcinis, Boletus edulis, they're called, or maybe pied de mouton, which are sheep's foot sheep's foot mushrooms, and they have this like frilly spore underneath. And it's so exciting when you find a little batch of mushrooms. And also King George mushrooms are like a button mushroom, but they're a little bit sharp. And we used to find those in the most amazing places, normally on the side of motorways, and in grassy sort of medium strips. You'd look in the grass and you'd look for a ring in the grass, and invariably that's where the mushrooms would be, in that ring. They actually grow in a ring. So we just go through and we chop up all of our mushrooms like so, put them back into our bowl. Now, if you don't use all of the mushroom for your Wellington, I'll show you another recipe that you can use it up to make a wonderful vegetarian pasta dish. That's to come later. So we turn our pan on, we'll get the heat up, and firstly, we shall start with a little bit of our olive oil and a little bit of our butter. Over here, we'll take our thyme. I'm just gonna strip the thyme leaves from the stalk. We just want the nice, soft leaves and tips. But we don't want to waste that because we can use that for stocks, to put on the barbecue if we want to add some smoke flavour to anything we're cooking. We'll run our knife through that ever so quickly. It doesn't have to be a really, really fine cut. Okay, there's our thyme. We'll do the same with our garlic. Actually, I'll just run my knife through the garlic lengthways. Okay, I'll do this in batches. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some thyme in my butter. It's a hard leaf, so I need to fry it a little bit. Now we'll add some mushrooms, probably half. Make sure they're well coated in that fat and oil. Bit of seasoning. The salt's going to help extrude the moisture out of the mushrooms. A little bit of cracked black pepper. We'll add a little bit more butter, just to keep that moist. A little bit more oil. And we'll gently saute those until the mushrooms have let out all their moisture. Then I'll take them out and I'll repeat with the remaining half of the mushrooms, and then I'll put all of those back in. I'm really going to slowly cook them down until they're rich and dark. So I sauteed off my mushrooms and they started to sort of concentrate in flavour. Now what I've done is I've just taken them out of the pan and I've hashayed them or minced them up with my knife. You can use a food processor if you like. I'm just going to return those to the pan and just let them simmer away. Make sure that mushroom flavour is really intense. You could cheat a little bit and put a bit of truffle oil in if you like, but I'm not going to do that today. Okay, so now we can move on to putting our lamb Wellington together. So Gary gave me this beautiful loin of lamb. It was a rack, but you can see it's actually like a little mini ribeye of beef, but it's a lamb. It's got that lovely line of fat through the middle. Okay, what I'm going to do is simply season it quite liberally. I'll just season some of the board like so. And then we'll just roll that through, roll it back and forth, maybe a little bit more on the board like so. A bit of pepper. And we'll just roll the lamb back and forth in that seasoning so it picks it all up. Nicely seasoned. And we've got a pan here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop it in the pan and get it nice and golden all the way around the lamb. Sizzle, sizzle. No need to put any oil in there or anything. There's enough little bits of fat on top of that loin that's going to render and create to that lubrication that I require. So don't leave it on one side for too long. We just want a nice even coat. So you'll hear it sizzle. We'll have a little look. We want that caramelization to occur. It's a good idea too, when you buy your lamb or any meat, leave it unwrapped in the fridge overnight before you use it, just so it dries out. Sometimes the lamb or the proteins can be wet aged. They'll be like in a vacuum pack, which means they're quite wet. So it's always really nice to let things dry out. It just gives them a better conformation and also improves the flavour a little. So we just roll that around. Just continue to roll that until you end up getting a nice sort of crusty caramelisation over the lamb. It's all nice and even. So the idea is we're going to actually end up cooking this about medium is where we want to be with this lamb. We don't want it medium rare. I think lamb can be a little bit chewy when it's undercooked. So it's nice to cook it medium. Okay, we don't want it too crusty, but if we have a look at that, you can see how nice and even it is. And I'm just going to let that rest there and cool down. Here I've got my puff pastry, so we're going to leave the plastic on the bottom. I've got a tray into which I'm going to place my Wellington once it's cooked. So we've got the duxelle here, that intensified fried mushroom kind of pate, which is a little fine, not too coarse. I've got my lamb, which we're just going to cover in French mustard. If I'm making a beef Wellington, I'll use hot English mustard. Sometimes the recipe calls for pate, like a chicken liver or duck liver pate. I don't normally put it in. I prefer the mustard and just the mushrooms by themselves. So we liberally coat that lamb loin in mustard. Okay, just render it all over. We'll go to our pastry now, and what we're going to do is just make a little bed for this lamb to sit on, and we're just going to push out the duxelle like so, and we're going to cover 3/4 of the puff pastry with our duxelle. I'll leave a little bit naked at this end and 1/4 of it naked that end. And the reason you want to make sure you cook most of the moisture out is as we cook this, obviously the mushrooms are going to let out more moisture if they haven't been cooked enough, which will end up turning your pastry soggy. Okay, now we take our lamb loin that's completely coated in mustard, and look at that lamb loin fits perfectly into our pastry sheet. Okay, now we're going to pull up this leading edge like so. Now I can take this plastic off, and this is where it becomes a little bit like rolling sushi. Okay, bring it all the way around, and just before we get to the end, I'm going to put some egg wash on that leading edge and pull it right around. Now I'm just going to trim off the ends. I leave the ends open. I don't enclose them. The reason I do that is so it lets steam vent. And it's also advantageous because if someone doesn't like their meat medium, then you can use the end bits that will be slightly more cooked, present them with the well done side out. It'll still be nice and medium in here, but when they look at it, they won't go, oh, it's too undercooked for me. I'm just gonna make a little bit of garnish on the back of it with the back of my knife. We go back to our egg wash. And we brush that liberally with egg yolk. We're going to pick that up, transfer it, and I'm just going to pull out this plastic. Whew, that was hard work, harder than it seemed actually. But now it's ready to go. We're going to let that rest for a few minutes, and I'm going to pop it into an oven at about 180 to 200 degrees and cook it for about 25 minutes. And the puff pastry should puff up, be golden and crisp. Then we'll use a meat thermometer just to check the temperature inside. Allow it to rest before serving. I think I might have left the lamb in a little bit longer than I should have. I took my eye off the ball. Actually, the director was supposed to set a timer and she didn't. That's who I'm blaming. But anyway, what we'll do is we just take off the end, yum, and we can eat that. That's like the yummy little part. So what we'd normally do is take it out, let it rest. The core temperature of the lamb should be about 50 degrees, which means it's a medium. So we're just going to take a nice slice now through. So drum roll, please. We'll see what it's like. Oh, and it's a wee bit over. Yeah, but all the same, the flavours are going to be fantastic. And then you can see the lovely ring of duxelles. We've got our lovely lamb in the middle. I bet you it's still super tender. And you've got that lovely flaky pastry. I'd just serve this maybe with a little bit of roasted vegetables or some steamed spinach, and that would be absolutely perfect. It's only a little bit over. So I'm actually pretty happy with that because it's still quite moist. So it's not really that far over. And I think if you start with a really nice sort of 4/4 loin with that bit of fat in the middle, then that will help save the day. I'm going to try some. Actually, this is the best bit. The end of the pastry where you've got all the lamb juice and the mustard and the mushrooms. Yum. Yummo.